Neshemichu Kuchabuchu Ushachim Te. ויקח קורח בן יצהר בן קהת בן לוי ודתן ואבירם בני אליאב ואון בן פלט בני ראובן ויקומו לפני משה ואנשים בני ישראל 50 ו200 נשיאי עדה קראי מועד אנשי שם. The Parashat of Shavua, we have something so difficult and so much that we can learn about ourselves and about what's going on in our world. And B'ezrat Hashem, we're going to take this into a very interesting sugya of voting, of how do we choose who to vote for, and which parties to vote for, and what time, when we should vote, and everything. So B'ezrat Hashem, there's a lot of Torah we're going to go through tonight. And in my Mela Torah, everywhere the Torah, water is mentioned, it's Torah, and so when I jump in the water is fine. The translation of Onkelos Leger, was a Roman prince that converted to Judaism. Well, was a very interesting figure that we could tell this whole story. It's very interesting. But he was a Roman convert to Judaism. Was the son of Titus the Rasha, and he translated the whole Torah into Aramaic, and so it's a very important translation that we have. He translates Vayikach Korach, Vayipaleg Korach. Now, the word in Aramaic, also in Hebrew, Vayitpaleg, Palug, means machloket, means to make a separation, means to cause a difference. And that is basically what we see that Korach did. He took one side of Am Yisrael and he separated them, created a political faction. And that's why in Hebrew you say, how do you say political party in Hebrew? Miflaga. So it's the same shorish. If you notice the shorish, it's Pei Lamed Gimel. And so Korach takes his political party and he goes in and says, Moshe Rabbeinu, everything you're doing is wrong, and you took all the ruling positions for yourself and your brother, and you left nothing for us. And everyone's kadosh. Now what happened? Korach, he didn't really think that everyone was kadosh. He might have actually thought that, but he wasn't doing this for anyone except for himself. That's why he said Masechet Avot, that kol machloket, that is not the shalom b'shem b'shamayim. Every time someone disagrees, and their purpose is not for the sake of heaven, then sofo shelo litkayam. If I say to you, look, I think what you're doing is wrong, what I think you're doing is incorrect, I don't agree with how you understood that, we can talk, we can say, oh, how do you understand the Gemara, how do you understand this, how do you understand that? There's a lot of different machlokot that are l'shem shamayim. That's what two chavrutas, when they're learning together, they're very often disagreeing, but it's everything's l'shem shamayim. And that's why we say, sofo litkayem, that the end of that is that there will be kiyum, there will be existence, there will be strength, that will grow from that. But if their machloket chas v'shalom, their disagreement is not l'shem shamayim, it's for their own honor, for their own ga'ava, for their own sake of making themselves famous or getting their name out there, then it's not going to be sofo litkayem, it's going to be failed. And that's exactly what happened. The Mishnah there brings Korach as the example of total failure. Someone who did something that was not for Kodesh Baruch Hu, and he was cholek on Moshe Rabbeinu, which is essentially saying you're being cholek on a Kodesh Baruch Hu, and his end was total and utter destruction, as the Torah tells us. Now, for anyone who keeps up in the news in Israel, the Knesset has voted to end its current session. And there will be elections in the next few months. I've heard that Rav Lando wants the elections to be as early as possible, even before Rosh Hashanah. Shas wants after Rosh Hashanah, because they can use the slichot is a good campaigning time for them. Sephardim have a full month of slichot, so you can send a Shas representative to all the big gatherings where they do slichot, and it's a good campaigning time for them, so they want after Rosh Hashanah, and of course Bibi wants as late as possible, wants to extend his term as long as he can. But anyway, in the next few months there's going to be elections in Israel. In another 2 years there's going to be also elections in America, and B'ezrat Hashem at the end of the shiur we're going to talk also about Chutz La'aretz and voting in Chutz La'aretz. And basically we want to ask a question. What is voting? Is voting a mitzvah? Is that something I do a mitzvah when I vote? Or is it something that could be even forbidden for me to do? Or is it something that, it's rashut, I could do it, I could not do it? It's up to me. I don't lose out on anything, but I don't gain anything. And so that's what we want to do. First of all, we want to thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we're in the land of Israel and that we're seeing mamash kibbutz galuyot. We're seeing people coming from all over the world returning to the Jewish homeland and coming together. Unfortunately, what we're missing out on is what it's written in Sanhedrin on the 98th page on the front side. There it's written, Ba'achishena zachu, Be'ata lo zachu, that there's two forms of Geulah, of redemption. One is Be'achishena, that's all of Am Yisrael does tshuva, and immediately there's Geulah, immediately there's redemption, and B'ezrat Hashem will have the zechut for that. There's no war, there's no fighting, there's no nothing. And we just immediately get Mashiach and redemption, and then there's Be'ata, which the Chachamim say that they lo zachu, that they didn't have the merit for it, and that's basically, it's redemption, but it's redemption that's very slow, redemption that has a lot of wars, Gog u'Magog, the Tzirei Mashiach, as the Chachamim called, and so it's a very difficult form of redemption. And so we haven't seen this full redemption of Chesed and Rachamim, mercy and peace. Rather, we're in the very slow process, and the clock is ticking away. And how do we know? Because we're still under the rule of a non-Jewish government, essentially. Even though the members of this government are Jewish, for the most part, it's very, how it behaves is much like a European government, is a European parliamentary system. And most of the people are not religious, and they're not making laws according to the religion. And they're even doing things that are against the religion. They're creating laws that are against Bachorei Yeshiva, against people who want to learn Torah, that are making it very difficult to learn Torah, and they're throwing people in prison literally for what? For learning Torah. That in the last, there's been 80, in this past week, there's been 80 Bachorei Yeshiva and Avrachim, young Avrachim, that have been thrown into prison. Why? Because they chose to learn Torah. And so B'ezrat Hashem, we're going to see a full Geulah, we're going to see all of Am Yisrael do tshuva, but because we have a democratic system, can we take advantage of it, or should we stay away from it? That's essentially the question that we want to ask. And the first source that we're going to look at is from Shlomo Melech in Mishlei, says, Lev Melechim Beyad Hashem, Al Asher Yachpotz Yiteinu. And therefore, what does that mean? It means the hearts of kings are in the hands of Hashem, and how He wants to turn them, He's going to turn them. And so, what does that mean? That anyone who has a ruling position, a king or a minister, or even members of the government in our own day, that they are under a very special hashgacha, very special control of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that they are basically have more influence from HaKadosh Baruch Hu because their decisions and their actions have much wider spread outcomes. Whereas I decide to do something, it might affect my family, it might affect my friends, but my decisions don't affect millions of people. Like a king or a prime minister decides he's going to go to war, decides he's going to raise taxes, it has an effect on millions of people. And therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu has special guide upon them. And that's why it says, Ibn Ezra and the Mitzvah say more or less the same thing, that he's like a shliach, he's sent by an ambassador of Hashem, and whatever he's going to do for the malchut, for the government, that is going to be under the control of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So if the government does something, it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu guiding it so that everyone can get what they deserve, for good or for bad. And so what do we see from that? And also the Ralbag talks about this, that really we don't need to vote. The bottom line is we don't need to vote, right? Because if HaKadosh Baruch Hu controls in the government, and everything's done according to our actions, like everything in the world, everything that happens to us is according to our own actions. Everything we do, we bring on ourselves. Why do we say Nichrata HaNefesh Achi? Why do we say that we don't say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is koret, is doing koret to a neshama. We say Nichrata, that the neshvish, the neshama, the soul by itself becomes koret. What does that mean? Because the person does it to themselves. It's not the Kodesh Baruch Hu doesn't do it to him. The person does it to himself by doing his sins. And so the same thing here. Kodesh Baruch Hu is controlling the government, and everything that's going to happen to a person is going to be according to their own actions. Therefore, what do we need to do? We don't need to vote. We need to do tshuva. We need to pray. We need to ask the Kodesh Baruch Hu for mercy, and that's all fine and dandy. Except for that, we have in Masechet Beitzah on the 17th page on the front side. We say, Kol Mitzonotav Kitzuvim, Lo me Rosh Hashanah lo Rosh Hashanah, that everything that the Kodesh Baruch Hu decides, the exact amount of money that a person is going to make in a year, Kodesh Baruch Hu decides from Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Hashanah. So therefore, I'm going to say, you are going to get $1 million this year. Now you could win the lottery and get it all at once. You could work like a dog and get it over all 12 months of the year. You could make a few big sales throughout the year. You're going to get $1 million. No matter what you're going to do, you're going to get $1 million. No more or no less. That's what was decided on Rosh Hashanah. Now, it's written there also that this comes to exclude the money that you take out for Shabbat, for Yom Tov, for Talmud Torah. In there, that anyone who adds more, he gets it paid back. But that's a side note, that if we do things for Shabbat, HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings us more blessing. So don't think that if you're spending more money on Shabbat, you're losing out from that $1 million that HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided that you're going to get. Now, like we said, even though you only have, you decided you're going to get $1 million, you have to do something. You have to do something to get it. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that you're going to have to work like a dog, or it doesn't mean you can do nothing. You have to do something. Maybe your emunah is very high. Buy a lottery ticket. That's it. You buy a lottery ticket, you win all $1 million right in one moment. Or you can work, or forever more, or for less, you're going to get $1 million. It's all according to our emunah and how much we're going to work. But you have to do something. Even if it's 5 minutes of the year buying a lottery ticket, that's already a little something. Now that is to say, also if doing the lottery is mutar, and for Sephardim it's certainly much more difficult to permit the lottery, even playing scratch-offs and stuff like that. Rav Ovadia...
Can I ask one minor question?
Sure.
How is that not considered like gambling?
Well, because because gambling, the problem is that right now if we're gambling, I'm taking money directly from you. Whereas if I play the lottery, I'm not taking it directly from any person. So it's not stealing, but it is still a big problem, and certainly for Sephardim, it's actually a bigger problem. For Ashkenazim, there's more of a way.
I don't think there should be any heter for the lottery.
You do okay, but what do the poskim say? What should do, but that they could. There's a side to permit it, just in and of itself. So what do we see? Every person has to do hishtadlut. Everyone has to do a little bit of something to make sure that they get the money that was promised to them by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so we can already cross off the list from the side of emunah that we do need to vote, that we do need to do hishtadlut. We do need to go out and make our voices heard. But that's just from the side of emunah. We don't say lev melechim beyad Hashem, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu controls it and I don't have to do anything. We are actually going to say, go out and do something. That is something that we're going to do, just like for Parnassah, go out and do something. Now, what do we want to do? Now we're going to look at, I found, Baruch Hashem, a friend of mine brought me a transcript of a shiur of Rab Ben Zion Abba Shaul. Where Rab Ben Zion Abba Shaul talked about voting and some of the problems, and he took a stance, even though it's very much Rab Ben Zion Abba Shaul was a Rosh Yeshiva. And he didn't start writing books until the very end of his life. And so a lot of times people say things, Rab Ben Zion says this, Rab Ben Zion says that, and they seem to be contradicting things. And that's because oftentimes he didn't write, rather he answered questions to the individual people, and he answered the question to the person that was asking him. Whereas someone was still coming to Torah, someone who was already a Torah, was already Avrech, at different levels, he could answer them different questions, and so it wasn't as clear as his stance, and you can see that in this transcript of the shiur that we're going to see. Now, before we do that, like we said, Rab Ben Zion Abba Shaul is going to bring up some problems with voting. On the other hand, we have Rav Ovadia, that Rav Ovadia is going to permit it. Not just permit it, say there's going to be a mitzvah to vote. A mitzvah to vote. So, what do we do when we have two Gedolei Olam? We read their true vote. What do they write about it? And that's the sad part. Neither of them wrote anything. Rab Ben Zion Abba Shaul, we have at least a recording, a transcript of the shiur, and we know what he said. We know the problems that he brought up, the kushiot that he raised, and so we're going to look at those. Rav Ovadia, what do we have from Rav Ovadia? We have a written document that there's in recent years they've been printing a lot of the letters that Rav Ovadia wrote. They have more than 75 individual volumes that are about that thick of just letters that people ask him questions. He answered the questions, gave them an answer. Now these are very mutar asur. He doesn't bring a lot of pilpul. He doesn't talk about poskim. It's not like Yevia Omer, his main project, his main work, where you see very long thought out projects, very long thought out answers to halachic questions. This is someone asking him, should I do this or should I do that? And he tells them you should do this or you should do that. So it's he says it's a mitzvah to vote, but he doesn't go through the whole sugya. He doesn't explain why. So what we're going to do, we're going to look at the kushiyot that Rav Ben Zion Abba Shaul brings up, and we're going to get into the mind of Rav Ovadia and say, well, if Rav Ben Zion Abba Shaul forbade voting for this reason, what would Rav Ovadia say to permit it? So chas v'shalom, we're not coming to be cholek on Gidulei Olam. We have the biggest, utmost respect for all of our rabbis, all the rabbis of the previous generation. We're not coming to disagree with them. But we see that two massive rabbis disagreed with each other, but neither of them wrote enough to understand why they disagreed with each other. So we're going to try to go into the sugya and look through their eyes and look through their lens and understand why they said what they said. So the first problem let's see what we said. What does Rav Ben Zion Abba Shaul says? What's the problem? That I put people there, I vote for people, and then they're representing me. I don't know what they're going to say. And they're joining into the rules of the Memshala, that are the government that already exists. And there's really the main thing that bothers me. That the land of Israel, currently there's a non-Jewish government, and what I mean by that, it doesn't rule according to the laws of the Torah. It rules according to the laws that it invented, that people invented, not the laws that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us. Even though HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us laws that connect with every aspect of life, from damages to divorces to marriages before divorces, chas v'shalom, bezrat Hashem, lo divorces, but every aspect of a life, the Torah talks about, even things that you wouldn't think that the Torah talks about. Oh, welcome. So, what do you have? You have Rav Ben Zion Abba Shaul is now going to say, if someone is doing something, a Jew is going to do something to another Jew according to the laws of the government, which is a European system, then it's a Issur of the Torah, and he's going to bring the Rambam. What does the Rambam say? Kol hadan bedinei goyim uba'arachot shelehem afal pi shayu b'neihem kedinei Yisrael. Even if the government decided we're going to take all of Baba Kama, and that's going to be the laws of damages. And so what does someone say? If they're going to go to the non-Jewish court and rule according to the non-Jewish laws, even if the laws are very similar or even exactly the same, it's like the Torah, it's not good enough. The people's laws are better. I'm going to go over there where the laws are a little better, maybe favor me a little more. And so we see the Rambam brings this in Hilchot Sanhedrin Perek Kaf Vav. And we're also going to see the Shulchan Aruch is going to bring this in Choshen Mishpat, also Kaf Vav, Siman Kaf Vav. So, what do we say to that? In one side, it's like I'm putting Michshol Lifnei Iver. I'm causing someone to do something that is a Issur. I'm saying you go be a representative for me and do things that are a Issur. Now the question is that really the case? Now, what is Michshol Lifnei Iver? That means someone is, the classic example that's brought in the Gemara is you have a Nazir, someone who is sworn not to drink wine, and I bring him a cup of wine. He asks, can you bring me a cup of wine? Take it. Now, what does the Shulchan Aruch say there? That if someone is also a Issur to sell avodah zarah, brings a whole list of things that are a Issur. Now, what does the Ramah say there? The Ramah says, V'yesh omrim, and that's what is forbidden to sell them things that are connected to their avodah, or even the goyim would be a sword, as we're going to talk about in a second. That's only if you have the only shop in the whole city for avodah zarah, the only shop in the whole city for wine for Nazirim, the only place where someone can get something that is forbidden for them to consume. Now, what does that mean? If there's this other place, as the Ramah is going to say, so if they can go to another place and buy it, there's no prohibition. This Nazir, I didn't cause him to drink, He didn't have to buy from me. He could have bought from Reuven. He could have bought from Shimon. He could have bought from Levi. He could have bought from a lot of different people. He didn't have to buy from me. So the fact that he bought from me, I don't do any it's not forbidden for me. And so the Ramah finishes, V'yesh machmirim, and there's those who restrict, the minhag is to be lenient, and our personal minhag is to be lenient. But someone who really fears Hashem will be machmir on himself and will not do mechshol lifnei iver. Now, as we said, if we're going to say that's for something that is definitely a Issur, but if we're going to say that in voting there's a possible mitzvah, then there's no reason to be machmir. As soon as we say there's a mitzvah, we can be makel. We go like the first opinion that the Ramah says. So what happens when I vote for someone to go be in the Memshalah? I send them, and they're representing me, and I say, I want you to go do X, Y, and Z. I'm voting for you because you said you're going to bring money to yeshivot, you're going to fight for the rights of religious people, you're going to do things that are going to make religion more widespread in Israel. That's why I voted for you. Now, when you get there, I'm not expecting that you're going to do things that are Issur. I'm not expecting that you're going to go out and doing the things that the Torah forbids you to do. And in this government, you don't have to. Someone who's in the government doesn't have to vote on laws that are connected to arachot, that laws are connected to things that would be against the Torah. They can choose not to vote on that. I'm stepping out on this one. I'm not a part of this. So because he has the option to step out, you don't have lifnei iver lo titeni mechshol. So we can cross that off the list, that here you don't have that prohibition. However, what happens if I send someone, and now, what does Rabbi Zion Abba Shmuel say? They're there because of what I gave them. They wouldn't be there if I didn't vote for them. And so, where can we get? Where do we know that someone sent someone to do things and they didn't do exactly what he told them to do, and he did things were even against what he said? David HaMelech alav shalom and Yoav. Yoav was a very bit of a firecracker. Yoav. And he really had a lot of problems with a lot of people, and sometimes when he just had Mayim ad Nefesh, just killed them. Just murdered them. And so we have Avner ben Ner, that of course we know that Avner ben Ner was part of Shaul's government, was the leader of Shaul's army, and because they were in a war together, there was a lot of bad blood between them. But after Shaul died, Avner ben Ner, David HaMelech brought him close to the government. He knew this would be a good thing for him. Yoav doesn't have it. Yoav is very angry that Avner ben Ner killed his brother in the fighting that they had between them. And so what does he do? First opportunity he gets, cuts off his head. And so what do we see from that? What happens? Oh, theoretically I would say David HaMelech is going to be culpable for the murder of Avner ben Ner because he went in there, he gave him the power, he gave him all the ma'amad that he had, and yet, what happened? He did something that was against it that he didn't want. Now, what does David HaMelech say? He said, I didn't want this to happen. So what does he say there? Shmuel Bet, in the third parak. Neki anochi umamlachti me'im Hashem ad olam medamei Avner ben Ner. Yuchulu al rosh Yoav or al beit Aviv. I'm clean. I know I put Yoav, I gave him all his power, but I did not tell him to do that. And I didn't want him to do that. I brought Avner ben Ner here to bring him closer to my government, to bring him to make peace between Shaul's former factions. And so the fact that he went out and did something that was against my will, I'm clean of that. And then we have the mitzvah David brings in, says Meforash, Naki Anochi, that my hands are clean. Lo medati nasta, that it wasn't my opinion that it should be done like that. Ve'yeh naki me'onish, and I'm clean of punishment. I'm going to be clean. And so from here we see massive Hacham, 2 generations ago, Rav Ovadia Hadaya, and he was the head of the Beit Din in Yerushalayim, and he was also Rosh Yeshivat HaMekubalim. Now that's something you don't usually see in this generation, where you have someone who is massive in Halakha and massive in Kabbalah. You don't usually see them together. Everyone who's doing Halakha knows a lot of Kabbalah more than I do. And everyone who's doing Kabbalah knows a lot of Halakha more than I do. But then you see someone who is number one in both those categories. 2 categories, he takes away the gold, That's something that's very rare these days. And he asks the same question, what about voting? And he says that you have a problem. Lo techaber l'rasha, that you shouldn't be connected to a rasha. And you send someone to the Knesset, you send someone to the parliament. What are they going to do there? They're going to sit with people who are rashaim, that are mechalel Shabbat, that are doing a lot of averot, and they're going to be even against Jewish people, against Jewish values. And so he's going to come out in favor of voting, and so he's going to bring a tirutz. His tirutz is going to say that when you have lo titchaber l'rasha, when you have one person connecting to one rasha, you have one tzaddik, one rasha. When you don't have lo titchaber l'rasha, when you have a group of people. So I'm sending someone to be a representative, and they have a group of Jewish people or religious people, and a group of non-Jewish people. Then that's fine. That's not there's no Issur of lo titchaber l'rasha. And he says, the more so here, that I'm sending someone to be my representative, and they're going in there, and they're doing things that are for the sake of the Jewish people. They're going to send them in, and they're going in, they're not just going in to hang out and talk to them and see how things are going to be doing. They're going in, they're going to say, we want to bring money to yeshivot, we want to make sure that the mikvaot are taken care of, we want to make sure that the public transportation is closed on Shabbat. He's going in with the purpose of protecting the Torah, protecting the Jewish people, doing Ratzon Hashem, and therefore he's going to be even more protected. So 2 tirutzim of Rav Avadia Hadaya, Vala Yaskilya Abdi. Now, so we see from here that there is definitely, according to Rav Avadia, a mitzvah to vote, and all the more so that we went through the tirutzim of the people who would disagree, and we were zocheh to the Toretz Kol HaKushiyot. Okay, so now who to vote for? And this is also something Rav Ben Zion Abba Shaul said. Rav Ben Zion Abba Shaul in the transcript that we found, he says, don't vote. If you're going to vote, vote. If you're not going to vote, don't vote. It's very, very loose. Then it wasn't a very muchlat decision, muchlat pasak. And he says, I will say, livchor rak b'miflagot kiddushot. And so what does that mean? What do we can understand miflagot political parties that have kiddusha? How could, that seems like an oxymoron. Military intelligence or jumbo shrimp, a holy political party. But what he means to say is that a miflaga that is going to operate according to Gedolei Ador. That there is a Gedol Ador, whether it's going to be Rav Yitzchak Yosef or Rav Lando, for Ashkenazim, Sephardim, everyone for their Rav, that they're going to be going and acting according to the opinions of a Gedol, that is a Gedol in Halakha, that the people at large are also following. And so not even a political party, you don't have even political parties where you have religious people that are leading them, but they're not rabbis, they're not Gedolei Ador, and so that is not in the level of Kedusha, because they're not having guidance from people who are mamash, not just kulam, sunken into the Torah at every moment, but they also have Ruach HaKodesh to guide us. And so, how do we know who are the right people to vote for? The Rabbi Zion Abba Shaul is going to finish. Va'od amar the Rav Gaon sheSefaradi yivchor Sefaradi, Ashkenazi, that everyone should vote within their Eidah. That if someone's Sephardi, first of all, you're going to take only political parties that are guided by religious leaders, by our rabbis, by Gedolei Ador, and then you're going to say, okay, I'm Sephardi, so I'm going to vote for Shas, or I'm Ashkenazi, so I'm going to vote for Gimel, whatever it may be. So how do we know who to put in there? How do we know who to vote for? We have to look at a pasuk. We have a pasuk that Yitro is going to tell the Moshe Rabbeinu in Parashat Yitro. That's going to say that he's going to tell Moshe Rabbeinu you should put people to help you judge the people. And so what does he say? Anshe Chayil, Anshe Emet, Sonei Betza, and Sonei Betza v'Yirei Elokim. Sorry, I wrote this with all the Pirushim in between, so I had it all spread out. And so we're going to go through one by one. Anshe Chayil, the Ramban is going to bring that they're going to have the ability to stand up and lead. They're born natural leaders, and they're going to be able to lead people. That people are going to question them and always be, everyone who's a leader always has people questioning him. They're going to be able to withstand that. They're going to be able to stand against that. and they're going to have the power to carry that burden. And Ibn Ezra is going to write something similar to that, and they won't fear. They won't fear people, he means to say. Of course, they're going to have fear of Hashem, as we said, that Yira'eh Elokim is one of the conditions that we're going to bring. And the last thing is that they're not going to be worried about people trying to work on them, say nice things to them. Hey, you're looking good today. Hey, I like the haircut. Bullet stock business. I like your tie. Oh, let's go out on my boat. Let's go do a barbecue. They're going to say, no, I'm not going to fall for those tricks. I'm not falling for that. And that's the last pirush is from Rashi. Anshe Emet. And Rashi's going to tell us that who are Anshe Emet? They're going to be Baalei Havtecha, people that I can rely on. And that they're going to be fitting that everything I know that they're going to do. They say they're going to go and get money for your shivot, they're going to go and get money for your shivot. They're not going to start doing all sorts of tricks and go in and out. We tried. When it's important to get this. I made sure to get my paycheck taken care of, but not the paychecks of all the avrachim. So I have to rely on them. And then we have, what's next? I want to say, Sona'e B'etzah, that they're going to be not taking shochad, they're not going to be taking bribes, they're not going to be stealing, they're not going to do anything. You know how the government works. They say on 3 pillars the world stands, but the money makes it spin. They're not going to be taking a part of that. And so that's what the Rashbam is going to say explicitly, that this is talking about bribes and stealing. And where do we learn this? We learn this from Shmuel HaNavi. That Shmuel HaNavi, when he's crowning Shaul to be the king of Am Yisrael, what does he say to them? That Shaul says, "Et shor mi lekachti, v'chamor mi lekachti, v'ad mi ashakti, v'ad mi ritzoti, u'miyad mi lekachti kofer, ve'elim einai." And so, who did I take an ox from someone? Did I take a donkey from someone? Did I work on anyone? Did I take money from anyone? Did I exchange? You give me a little money, I'm going to close my eyes, pretend like I didn't see anything. Shmuel says, I did none of that in all the years. From when I started being a Navi when I was a little kid. Now I'm an old man. I never once took anything, even things that were permitted for me to take. He says there, the Rashi says there, that really there were things that he was allowed to take. Really, it's on Am Yisrael to make sure that he's going around teaching Torah. Just like today, you have people that give rights to the Rabbanim, make sure that they can get from their classes, their places they need to go. That's mutar. That was mutar for Shmuel to do. He could have taken a donkey from them, the ride from city to city, to judge the people. Shmuel says, even the things that were permitted for me to take, I didn't take.
Even Moshe Rabbeinu with a donkey also, right? Moshe Rabbeinu also taking the donkey.
When?
When he went to Mitzvah.
Yeah?
Pretty sure. I read that somewhere. I don't know where I read that.
Oh.
This week's parasha. She's saying how he wasn't bribed.
Right. Okay, so the same idea. You could say even something that's permitted, but like as soon as even it's mutar. But there's always going to be the smell of something that's a little fishy there. So Shmuel Navi says, I didn't do anything of that. I was always working in the needs of the people, and I was always doing that, always taking care of things. Now, we can also see that the last thing that we're going to bring is Yira'eh Elokim. Now, what does that mean? She'ein lahem yira me'adam. They don't fear people. Rak Hashem levado. Only Hashem yitbarach. Ukenegdam amar Moshe hachamim u'nevonim ki lo yitachen liyot yira'eh shamayim rak mishu chacham. So, like we said, David HaMelech says Yirat Hashem Reshit Chochmah Yirat Adonai. That the beginning of wisdom is the fear of God. And so he says that those wisdom and fearing God go hand in hand. Someone who doesn't have fear of God will never be a hacham, but someone who has fear of God will grow in his chokhmah, and it becomes the seed for his chokhmah. And that's what the Ramban says in the Rambam references along with Ibn Ezra there. And the Ramban is also going to bring for us that the last thing we need, how do we get Yirat Shamayim, is anava. Anava. You have to be anav, you have to be humble, And so the Ramban in his Igeret says, Ya'aleh al libecha. We're going to translate, we're going to put it all in the Rabbin, like we're talking to these people representing us in government. Ya'aleh al libecha midat ha'anava. Shehi midat hatova mikol midot. That being humble is the very best thing according of all the midot, of all the character traits that you can have. Why? because we said in the Torah, Ekev Anava Yirat Adonai, that the what comes after someone who's been fearing Hashem, that comes after being humble, he's going to get Yirat Shamayim, and because of his Anava, he's going to get that Yirat Shamayim on into his heart. That's what the Ramban says. And there we also say in Avot, Hakina, jealousy, and Hata'ava ve'akavod motzim adam min ha'olam. As jealousy and desire and honor take someone out of this world. And so the Masechet Sanhedrin, it brings 3 examples of who are these people. Who do we talk about? Kina. That's when you have it that killed his brother. Cain, that killed his brother Abel for the twin sister that was born, and he couldn't stand it, and so he killed him. And Ta'ava, that Zimri ben Sula Salu, that we're going to see in a few more Parshiot, in Parashat Balak, that he does this disgusting act with a Midianite woman, and the last one, Kavod, we're going to come back to the Parashat Shavua, Korach ben Yitzhar. That all these people who chase after jealousy, who chase after their own desires, who chase after honor, that they, in the end, what was their end? All of them failed. And so, all the more so that someone has to be very, very careful watching themselves in this Kivuli government. I want to bring up, and that is that it's really, we have a big problem of a lot of money going to the wrong place. So as the Israeli government brings less and less money to Jewish institutions, to yeshivot, to kololim, they're giving money away to who? All sorts of religious institutions that are not Jewish. 127 million shekels. I'm going to say that again. 127 million shekels went to who? Christians. Christians, churches, and mosques. 127 million. And that's, the problem is Christianity is avodah zarah. Christianity is idol worship. Why? Because they don't believe in a unity of Hashem. We say Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is one. That means HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a unity. Believing in that unity is something that is fundamental to Judaism, and Christians believe in a Trinity, so they already broke HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Chas v'shalom, l'havdil. They already broke the whole idea of God into 3 parts. And who are they worshipping? They're worshipping someone who is his mother. His mother was a Zona that cheated on her husband, gave birth to a mamzer. To cover up the fact that she gave birth to a mamzer, she told a Greco-Roman story of how he was born, that God came down and made me pregnant, right? Just like Zeus came down and gave birth to, had relationship with a woman and gave birth to Hercules. Also, Mary had God come down and gave birth to Yimach Shemo. And who is this terrible person? Now, if you open up the Christian Bible, there's a big gap of time where we don't know who this was. All of the Yimach Shemo's life is brought in the Gemara, Masechet Sanhedrin. That where was he? He was working with one of the big rabbis of the same time, Yeshua ben Prachia. And basically what happened is they went to an inn, and Yeshua ben Prachia said, wow, what a beautiful inn. And what did Yimach Shemo said? About the innkeeper's wife is not the most, she's not a perfect 10, you know? She's not a perfect 10. I like perfect 10s. So this pervert is who they're bowing down to, the Christians. And then of course he went out and started worshipping Avodah Zarah. And this is the whole basis for Christianity, is this Zona that cheated on her husband, gave birth to a mamzer, who is a pervert, and did Avodah Zarah. And this is the basis for Christianity. And this is the people that the Israeli government are giving $127 million million shekels to. Baruch Hashem, it's not tachas, it would be a lot worse. But still, you can't give this kind of money away to people who are worshipping idols, to people who are worshipping people, to people who don't believe in the unity of Hashem. And in addition to that, we have Arab students are getting, an Arab student can get up, and in university can get up to 10,000 shekels a year. Every one of them can get up to 10,000 shekels a year, between scholarships, stipends, all sorts of stuff. So we have a lot of money going to a lot of places that are against the Torah, are against the Jewish people, and so it's very difficult for someone who will have to deal with that if they're in the situation. Now, what is the last thing? And with this is where to end. It is my humble opinion that the Jewish people will see a lot more success from the government, and even the Haredi parties that are acting according to Gidulei Olam. I'm not coming to disagree with them. I'm just presenting an idea that when the Jewish people want to do a lot more for the Jewish people as a whole, they're going to see a lot more success. I'm not just going to go in. I want to get money for yeshiva. That's going to be my first priority. But I also want to make sure that every city in Israel, every town in Israel, every neighborhood in Israel has a mikveh that a woman can go and do tevilah in. I also want to make sure that every public transportation system in Israel is going to be closed on Shabbat. I'm going to make sure that everything is going to be run according to the Torah and give people the zechut. And where can we do this? The number one place we can do this is in education. The Haredi parties need to start putting more kosher hashkafot, kosher mind worldviews into the education system in Israel. That even someone who's in a Chiloni place is learning about true Torah and true Jewish mindset and true Jewish worldview, and that they will learn, and so that hopefully they'll get that worldview, and they'll get Yirat Shamayim, and they'll get the ability to have that. And even if they don't become religious, it's still going to be a part of them. And the way that they're going to view religious people is going to be very different. And the way that they're going to connect with Jewish people and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to be very different. And so B'ezrat Hashem, if I know for a fact that if the Jewish parties went out and did that, the Haredi parties went out and did that, and thought about more about the Jewish people as a whole, and not just their own sector. And even though they need to care first and foremost about their voters in their own sector, make sure their money's getting the yeshiva, make sure there's not problems with the daycares, make sure there's everything that the Haredi need, but also think about the Jewish people as a whole, and giving them everything that they need to be healthy Jewish people. And the last thing we're going to get into is America, Europe. Not everyone lives in Israel. There's people who live in America, and the question there is, what is the problem with voting, and who should I vote for in America? So where are we going to get an idea from? Is the first thing that we're going to look at is we have Mordechai HaYehudi. Mordechai HaYehudi, it says in the pasuk at the very end of the Megillah, Ki Mordechai HaYehudi Mishnei LaMelech, that Mordechai was the second hand to the king, Achashverosh, V'Gadol, and he had a very high position of standing there. Doresh tov le'amo v'doresh shalom l'chol zaro. That he worried about the Jewish people, that they would have shalom, that they would peace, that they wouldn't be bothered. And so that, first and foremost, you have to look at caring about the Jewish people. Vote for someone who's going to care about Jewish people in that same country, care about Jewish people as a whole, also in Israel, also in other countries, that caring about the Jewish people and the safety of the Jewish people is going to be the most important thing. And the question is going to be, well, what about things that are against the Torah? I have two political parties that say that they say we're going to protect Jews, we're going to make sure that they're protected, that they have everything that they need, and we're not going to forbid shechita, which is something that we've seen in European countries in the last few years, that European countries are actually trying to forbid shechita so that they wouldn't be able to get less kosher food. And so what about things like gay marriage and abortion, which are not just against the Torah, they're also against the Sheva Mitzvot B'nei Noach. They're against the 7 things that non-Jews are commanded in from the Torah as well. So the question is, if I vote for someone says, I'm going to protect the Jewish people, but I'm going to also permit gay marriage and permit abortion, of course the first thing when we said the safety of Jewish people is first and foremost. So you have to go always after the safety of the Jewish people. Now the question is, if I have a problem of lifnei iver lo titei mechshol, like we said, that if I create a stumbling block before someone that he's going to fall and do a sin, and like we said, even for a non-Jew, these things are sins. And so as we said, that if they don't have to do it, I'm not forcing them to do something that's forbidden, then it's not a problem, as the Ramah said, as we said earlier. But there is room to be strict. And here, where it's not going to cause any problems, you can definitely be strict. So if you have two people, one says I'm going to protect the Jewish people, the other says I'm going to protect the Jewish people, and they're believed to do that. They're both believed that they will actually protect the Jewish people, let's say. And one says I'm going to forbid gay marriage and I'm going to forbid abortions. The other says no, I'm going to permit it. I'm going to permit gay marriage, I'm going to permit abortions. Then it's good to vote for the one that's going to forbid, because that's against the Torah. That's against what the Jew that even against what is permitted for non-Jews to do. And like we said, the Ramah says if you're going to put something, a stumbling block, before someone that's going to do an Aveirah, it's better not to do it, even if they're not forced to do it. And so, what we can do is we should be strict on that. You should always vote for people that are doing things, even if they're goyim, according to the Torah. But the safety of the Jewish people is the most important thing. And therefore, Bezrat Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to Yigzor Aleinu Gizarot Tovot. He's going to get rid of all these terrible decrees that have been decreed upon us by this non-Jewish government, this non-Torah government that are putting Bachorim, like we said, 80 Bachorim that were learning Torah have been thrown into jail in the last week alone for learning Torah. And so Bezrat Hashem HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to protect them and free them, and also protect all the soldiers and bring peace. And Mashiach Zikenu is going to come. B'mirav Yameinu, Amen v'Amen.